Bucknutters, welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, February 10th, 2017. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by the people's champ himself, Matt Baxendell. Bax, first of all, how do you pronounce the month we are in? Is it February or February?
Let's go with February.
You're going February, so the way it's actually spelled. See, I've always pronounced it February, thinking the first R was silent, but I've heard more and more people pronounce it February the way it's spelled. So I put a little poll up on Twitter. Got nearly 600 votes. The question was, is the first R in February silent? 66% said yes, 34% said no. So per Twitter, which is always an impeccable source, as we know, it is February.
You know what, Dave? I'm not from Ohio originally, but one of the things I always laughed about when I got to Ohio State was that I had a bunch of friends from Northeast Ohio, and they said that is the dialect that weathermen around the country and news anchors around the country are supposed to use, is Northeast Ohio. So if they say February in Northeast Ohio, then it's probably the way that you should say it, because that's how the news people are going to say it.
Okay. Well, there we go. I think we cracked it. You know, like I said, the Twitter poll says it all. 66%. It's February, so drop that first R. All right, now let's on to less pertinent items such as Ohio State football. Nick Bosa has to be a starter this fall, in my opinion. If he is a starter, who goes to the bench? Because the Buckeyes have both starting defensive ends returning. Of course, Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year, Tyquan Lewis, and Sam Hubbard. So do you agree that Nick Bosa has to be a starter? And if he is, who goes to the bench, Bax?
I don't know that you necessarily have to call Nick Bosa a starter. I mean, you can call him a starter, but the way Ohio State's D-line is going to work this year is you're essentially going to have two lines rotating in and out with all the bodies that they have. I mean, let's face it, your top four defensive ends are Tyquan Lewis, Sam Hubbard, Jalen Holmes, and Nick Bosa, right? You have a defensive line, you got Mike Hillback, you got Tracy Sprinkle, you've got B.B. Landers, you've got Dramont Jones. And by the way, you have younger guys that are going to be coming in too. So all those things combined, I just named two defensive lines worth of players that have already proven to be contributors. So we can call whoever the starter and whoever the backup. The truth is you're going to have guys playing 40% of the snaps and guys playing 60% of the snaps to keep them fresh. And the other thing with Nick Bosa is in every single passing down situation, you know he's going to be on the field in that rushman package. So I don't think you can necessarily say that you're going to sit Sam Hubbard or you're going to sit Tyquan Lewis, but I do think that Nick Bosa, realistically speaking, is probably going to have greater than 50% of the snaps. But you're talking about two guys in Hubbard and Lewis next year who are likely to be NFL draft picks in 2018 and not like seventh-round picks either. I could easily see Lewis and Hubbard both being, say, third-rounders in a year. So I don't know that the starter's name matters as much. Because you just have essentially two lines worth of players who are going to play this year.
All right, moving to the offensive side of the ball, let me give you a situation. J.T. Barrett goes down with a season-ending injury. The Buckeyes have to turn to either Joe Burrow or Dwayne Haskins as their starting quarterback. Who do you want to see in there?
Well, first of all, I don't want to see that happen. I know there's a certain segment of the fan base where like, please, that's crap. J.T. Barrett's going to have an amazing year under Kevin Wilson. We want him in there. That said, at this point, I'm still rolling with Joey Burrow. I have not seen Haskins in any sort of live fire situation here. So as much hype as you hear about him having over winter practices, the truth of the matter is that I hope Haskins is as good as the hype. I've seen Burrow play, and I know he's going to be more than good enough to win a lot of football games for Ohio State. And let's face it, he was just called the next Tom Brady by Mike Weber. So it's not like the guy has no talent. So right now I'm leaning towards Joey Burrow if we have to get to the situation we hope we're not in.
I was just going to ask you, did you see the tweet from Mike Weber? I mean, that says a lot right there because one thing I've pointed out, because I kept saying Joe Burrow as well. Right now I'm torn because I kept saying Joe Burrow, he's the heir apparent to J.T. Barrett. I started to change my mind back when I was down in the Fiesta Bowl, or down in Phoenix covering the Fiesta Bowl, because so many of their teammates were just talking up Dwayne Haskins. You just heard player after player talking up Dwayne Haskins. So to me, it says a lot that Mike Weber is coming out and saying, hey, don't sleep on Joe Burrow. He's the next Tom Brady. Now, is he the next Tom Brady? I don't know if Joe Burrow is going to be the best quarterback ever, but that says a lot to me because I put a lot of validity in what the teammates say.
Yeah. What is it? Ball knows ball, right? Isn't that what Colin Cowherd always said?
Yeah.
Players know players. So, look, it's one thing when your pretending to be Deshaun Watson in a scout team environment without a ton of pressure. It's another thing when you're going to be doing it against your defense, trying to play your own offense, trying to compete with somebody else to get ahead. And, like I said, we saw Joe Burrow do very well in the spring game. We've seen him do very well in limited action running this offense. He's a mature kid. He's been here for a while. He's a coach's kid. As of right now, I'm going to have to see Haskins beat out Burrow to change my mind on it.
Let's talk 2018 recruiting real quick. Buckeyes are off to a very good start, not off to the phenomenal start they were off to last year at this time, and they had like half of their class already committed. But 3 excellent prospects so far. As you pointed out in the bucket, which you write every Sunday, it's interesting. You have 3 prospects so far in this class, none of them from Ohio. I think that's going to change big time. The 2018 class in Ohio is excellent. But just give your thoughts so far on 2018 recruiting.
Well, first of all, the position you talked about Ohio State being in last year is where Penn State's at right now. The massive class that's number 1 in the country right now. So the Buckeyes need to catch up. I put this in the bucket last week. I said, the biggest, longest lasting reaction of Ohio State losing to Penn State this year is the renewal of James Franklin as a legit recruiter and making Penn State a much bigger force on the recruiting trail. What we're seeing from them is they're going national like they've literally never gone before. They've got kids from Texas and Georgia and California in their recruiting class too. So Ohio State has to catch up, and Ohio State has to stay going after all these national kids. But it is striking to see a recruiting class from OSU where you have a kid from California, a kid from Georgia, and a kid from Florida, and no one from Ohio. Now, I agree with you. I think the 2018 class in Ohio is going to be huge. We're going to get bigly into getting some of them, but I still think it's kind of shocking. You don't have 1 or 2 of those Ohio kids who are like Ohio State offered, trigger, boom, in the class. But, you have some very, very good players. A guy like Jalen Gill that we've been watching since he was an 8th grader. He's one of those names that I remember talking to you about him in 2012. It seems like it's been so long. But back when Marcus Ball was at Westerville South and Marcus Williamson was the kid that we were just starting to talk about, Jalen Gill was the one that everybody at school was talking about. So it's exciting to see him finally get to a point where, hey, maybe we can actually get him to commit. I feel very good about him being a Buckeye. The top 5 in Ohio look very good to become Buckeyes. And there's a lot of kids in 2018 in Ohio that haven't really been evaluated yet by all the services that I think are going to jump up into that 4-star kind of range. So it's going to be a good year, I think, for Ohio State in recruiting. But it is a little galling to see no Ohio kids yet when you have all kids from 3 states that are usually you only, in the back in the day, would only get 1 or 2 kids from those places. Or in the case of California, we never got anyone. So it's a big shift in the paradigm that I guess we're all still getting a little used to.
Yeah, I think the number 1 tackle in the country, Jackson Carmen from Fairfield, Ohio, he'll be a Buckeye, 5-star recruit. That's not a sure thing. that's my opinion. He will be a Buckeye. And, I read something about him recently that he plays with an absolute mean streak, and I love that. You can have every attribute in the world as an offensive lineman. If you don't have that mean streak, you're not going to be great. So I love knowing that Jackson Carmen doesn't just have the size and athletic ability, but he is a mean dude on the football field. I love hearing that. So it's going to be fun to see this class fill out with Ohio kids and just see the class fill out in general. All right, let's close with some basketball talk. We have late afternoon basketball tomorrow. Buckeyes at Maryland, 4 p.m. Game will be televised by ESPN. Ohio State is 15-10 and 5-7 in Big Ten play, and they could really use a big road win backs. Maryland is ranked 21st, and they are 20-4 overall, 8-3 in Big Ten play. The Terrapins beat Ohio State 77-71 in Columbus on January 31st. Bax, do you give the Buckeyes much of a chance to pull off the upset tomorrow?
I'm not the most optimistic person about this year's OSU Hoops team. If they hadn't won at Michigan a couple weeks ago, I would say there's no chance. But having said that, now that they actually pulled something off on the road, you're getting some decent guard play out of Jackson. There's a chance. It's a low chance, but there's a chance, And the weird timing, I think, helps Ohio State in the game because if this was like a 8 or 9 p.m. tip, you'd have Maryland ready to go. They'd be all excited in prime time. Their fans would be all excited and liquored up, if you will, and trying to make a really intimidating environment. Yeah, I'm glad it's a Saturday afternoon game for Ohio State versus a Saturday night game for Ohio State in prime time. It's like a JV football game, It's a little weird. So maybe Ohio State can go in there and catch the Terrapins sleeping, but I'm still not optimistic that they're going to be able to knock off the top 25 team on the road.
Great stuff as always out of the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Thank you very much, Bax, and thanks to all the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate it and hope you have a great weekend. Let's hear some Buckeye swag. Best damn band in the land.